Chapter 15. The Science of Pungency, the Wreck of the Gripshunden, and the Lure of the Exotic. In the late summer of 1495, a magnificent Danish-Norwegian flagship named the Gripshunden caught fire and sank beneath the cold, dark waters of the Baltic Sea. Aboard this ill-fated vessel was King Hans of Denmark, who was travelling in regal splendour to a high-stakes political summit in Sweden. The king survived the terrifying ordeal, but his royal cargo was swallowed entirely by the freezing sea. It remained hidden in the deep hypoxic silt for more than 5 centuries before marine archaeologists finally excavated the remarkably preserved wreck in 2021. When the modern divers sifted through the wreckage, they discovered an extraordinary payload preserved in the freezing mud. Alongside the expected armaments, royal effects, and wooden barrels, the archaeologists recovered more than 2,000 individual black peppercorns. They also found carefully stored caches of precious saffron, dried ginger, and exotic clove. One must immediately ask why a Scandinavian monarch in the late 15th century was travelling with a cargo hold full of tropical spices. The answer lies in the profound social, political, and economic weight that these tiny, shriveled berries carried in the pre-modern world. To possess black pepper in the Middle Ages was to possess tangible, edible power on a global scale. Spices were not merely culinary ingredients used to flavour a weak broth or a roasted bird. They were the ultimate luxury goods, draped in an intoxicating aura of foreign mystery, divine origin, and staggering wealth. In medieval Europe, the exact geographical origins of black pepper were deliberately shrouded in fantastic, terrifying mythology. Because European consumers lacked direct access to the equatorial sources of these spices, foreign merchants flourished wild legends to justify their exorbitant prices. Arab and Venetian traders spun elaborate tales of pepper trees guarded by highly venomous serpents in the deep, impenetrable jungles of India. They claimed that the only way to safely harvest the crop was to burn the forests entirely. According to these ancient merchants, this intense fire supposedly accounted for the peppercorn's blackened, wrinkled appearance and its fiery, biting pungency. These dramatic myths served a highly practical, ruthless economic purpose in the medieval marketplace. They terrified potential competitors, mystified the wealthy consumers of Northern Europe, and artificially inflated the market value of the spice to astronomical heights. For centuries, black pepper was quite literally worth its weight in silver and occasionally its weight in pure gold. The Venetian monopoly and the geography of black gold. To truly understand the science and history of pungency, we must trace the immense, grueling journey of the black peppercorn from the vine to the European table. Black pepper is the dried, unripe fruit of the Piper nigrum vine, a climbing leafy perennial native to the lush, humid Malabar coast of southwestern India. Cultivating this fragile plant required highly specific equatorial conditions, heavy monsoon rains, and intense, sweltering heat. From the bustling ports of ancient India, the spice embarked on a perilous, multi-stage journey across the known world. Ships heavily laden with pepper would cross the unpredictable Arabian Sea, navigating treacherous monsoon winds to reach the ports of the Red Sea or the Persian Gulf. From there, the precious cargo was unloaded and strapped to the backs of camels for a brutal overland trek across the scorching desert sands. Finally, the spice would reach the bustling, cosmopolitan markets of Alexandria or the Levantine coast. It was here that the European merchants, primarily hailing from the powerful maritime republics of Venice and Genoa, waited to purchase the black gold. By the 14th century, the Republic of Venice had ruthlessly secured a near-total monopoly on the European spice trade. The Venetians built an astonishingly wealthy empire on the back of the pepper trade, utilizing their formidable naval galleys to completely dominate the Mediterranean Sea. The massive stone storehouses of Venice were packed to the rafters with thousands of sacks of Indian pepper. This spice was then sold at staggering, unprecedented markups to the royal courts and wealthy merchants of Northern Europe. The immense profitability of this trade sparked fierce, bloody naval wars between Venice and Genoa, as both city-states vied for ultimate dominance over the spice routes. This Venetian stranglehold on the pepper market dictated the geopolitical fate of the entire modern world. The staggering markups applied by the Venetian merchants eventually forced the rest of Europe to desperately seek alternative, direct routes to the Indies. The desire to bypass the Venetian pepper monopoly directly inspired the Portuguese explorer Vasco da Gama to sail around the treacherous Cape of Good Hope in 1497. It was this exact same hunger for the science of pungency that pushed Christopher Columbus to sail westward across the uncharted Atlantic Ocean. Columbus accidentally collided with the Americas while searching for a cheaper, faster route to the black pepper of India. The mapping of the entire global world, the devastating era of European colonization, and the birth of modern international trade were all catalyzed by the relentless human desire for a spicy berry. The history of black pepper is, quite literally, the history of the modern world.
Debunking the myth. The economics of meat.
Despite the profound geopolitical importance of the spice trade, a deeply stubborn historical fallacy continues to plague our understanding of medieval culinary habits. And we must immediately address the most pervasive myth in culinary history, the idea that medieval Europeans used pepper primarily for masking the taste of rotting meat. This compelling but utterly false idea constitutes something of an unkillable urban legend in modern pop history. It is a story so instinctively attractive to modern sensibilities that mere facts seem completely unable to wipe it out from popular history books and television documentaries. We are thoroughly debunking this myth by examining the rigid, unforgiving realities of medieval economics and basic human logic. During the Middle Ages, black pepper was an astronomically expensive imported luxury, firmly controlled by the Venetian monopoly and subject to massive tariffs. Prices fluctuated wildly, but historical records from 15th century London indicate that a single pound of pepper often cost more than 2 full days of wages for a highly skilled craftsman. For an ordinary peasant, a mere pinch of black pepper was a completely unattainable, impossible luxury. If a noble household possessed the vast financial resources required to purchase spices shipped halfway across the earth, they certainly possessed the resources to buy a freshly slaughtered chicken. They could easily afford a newly caught fish, a prime cut of beef, or the cheap local salt required to properly preserve their harvest. As the esteemed culinary historian Terence Scully noted, the kitchens of late medieval European potentates had absolutely no reason to handle tainted meat in the first place. The lords and kings of Europe prided themselves on their refined, delicate gastronomic sensitivity. These royal elites would never have tolerated being served decaying, rotting food. Furthermore, their highly paid master cooks would never have dared to present spoiled meat to a powerful monarch, as such an insult could result in severe punishment or death. Beyond the economic absurdity, the physical chemistry of advanced decomposition cannot be simply covered up by a dash of exotic spice. When meat spoils, bacteria violently break down complex proteins to produce incredibly foul-smelling, toxic compounds like putrescine and cadaverine. Anyone who has ever smelt genuinely rancid meat understands that no amount of cinnamon, ginger, or black pepper can successfully mask the overwhelming stench of true putrefaction. Throwing an incredibly expensive, highly prized spice onto a piece of green, rotting pork would simply result in a dish that tasted like spicy garbage. The wealthy consume spices to enhance the natural, delicious flavors of high-quality foods, not to salvage the inedible refuse of the kitchen. Therefore, we must discard the rotting meat myth entirely and look to sociology to understand the medieval obsession with pepper. The edible Rolex. Conspicuous consumption. If the wealthy were not masking the taste of rotting meat, we must ask why they were consuming such staggering, seemingly excessive quantities of black pepper. To properly understand this phenomenon, we must look to the economic theory of conspicuous consumption. We can best define conspicuous consumption as an edible Rolex, a highly visible, consumable status symbol designed solely to project extreme wealth to one's peers. The sociological term was famously coined by the economist Thorstein Veblen in his seminal 1899 work, The Theory of the Leisure Class. Veblen argued that people engage in the highly visible acquisition of luxury goods primarily to signal their social prestige and carefully differentiate themselves from the lower classes. In the rigid, unforgiving social hierarchy of the Middle Ages, food was one of the most immediate and powerful markers of class distinction. The peasant diet was incredibly restricted, relying heavily on coarse barley bread, simple vegetable pottages, and perhaps a small piece of heavily salted pork. Peasants ate simply to survive the harsh winters, drawing their meagre sustenance entirely from the local land. The nobility, conversely, sought to demonstrate that they were completely unbound by the limitations of local geography and standard agricultural seasons. Serving a massive banquet heavily laced with Indian black pepper, Indonesian cloves, and Sri Lankan cinnamon was the ultimate flex of medieval power. It was a physical, theatrical demonstration that the host was rich enough to consume in a single meal commodities that travel thousands of miles across deadly oceans. Spices essentially embodied style, good manners, and supreme aristocratic prestige. The fact that recipes in elite medieval cookbooks called for such lavish, almost overpowering quantities of pepper hints that social showing off was often just as important as the actual taste. An aristocrat wanted their guests to instantly taste the immense wealth burning on their tongues. Furthermore, the medieval worldview categorized foods according to the ancient medical theory of the four humors. Physicians firmly believed that human health depended on maintaining a delicate, precise balance between hot, cold, wet, and dry qualities within the human body. Black pepper was medically classified as intensely hot and deeply dry by the prominent physicians of the era. It was therefore widely prescribed by royal doctors to safely aid in the digestion of cold, moist foods, such as fresh fish, eels, and certain cuts of beef. Thus, the heavy, generous application of pepper was viewed not only as a dramatic display of vast wealth, but as a scientifically sound dietary precaution. The elite were preserving their health and projecting their power with every single bite of peppered swan or spiced venison. The true nature of culinary preservation. While we are debunking the myth of masking rotting meat, we must carefully separate this fallacy from the very real, very necessary practice of medieval food preservation. In an era long before the invention of mechanical refrigeration, preserving the autumn meat harvest for the long, bleak winter was a literal matter of life and death. However, the primary, essential tool for this crucial task was not imported, expensive black pepper. The heavy lifting of medieval food preservation was accomplished entirely through air drying, heavy smoking, and most importantly, the massive application of cheap, locally produced salt. Salt radically alters the internal chemical environment of meat through the fundamental biological process of osmosis. It rapidly draws water out of the muscle tissues, fundamentally depriving destructive bacteria of the vital moisture they require to survive and multiply. The medieval peasant and the wealthy lord alike relied heavily on salted pork, pickled fish, and cured sausages to survive lean, freezing months. However, a diet consisting entirely of heavily salted, aggressively dried meats quickly becomes incredibly monotonous and thoroughly unpalatable. This is where the true culinary utility of black pepper entered the medieval kitchen and the early slaughterhouse. Spices were expertly deployed to enliven meat preserved by salting, bringing much needed variety and complex flavor profiles to an otherwise dull and overwhelmingly salty winter diet. A heavy dusting of freshly ground black pepper on a piece of cured charcuterie provided a sharp, pungent contrast that beautifully awakened the palate. It magically transformed a desperate, salty survival ration into an absolute culinary delight. Therefore, while the pepper was intimately associated with preserved meats, its role was entirely related to sensory enhancement rather than the prevention of macroscopic rot. It made the harsh, unrelenting reality of the medieval winter diet bearable for those who could afford to purchase it. Yet, as modern chemical analysis that has recently revealed, the medieval cooks who generously applied pepper to their cured sausages were inadvertently harnessing a highly potent biological weapon. Beneath the sharp taste and the aristocratic prestige, black pepper was quietly performing a microscopic miracle on the surface of the meat. The antimicrobial reality, essential oils. As we transition from the history of the medieval banquet to the hard science of food chemistry, we discover the actual biological utility of the spice. Modern laboratory analysis has proven beyond a doubt that black pepper is far more than a mere aromatic garnish or a display of wealth. It possesses proven antibacterial and antimicrobial properties that actually made it a functional chemical preservative in early human diets. This incredible protective function operates completely independent of the spice's famous flavor profile, functioning entirely on a molecular level. A single peppercorn is essentially a densely packed biological capsule containing a volatile arsenal of essential oils and potent phytochemicals. When the dry outer husk of the peppercorn is cracked open by a heavy mortar and pestle, these highly reactive compounds are instantly released into the environment. The primary essential oils found within black pepper include complex organic molecules like alpha-pinene, beta-pinene, limonene, beta-caryophyllene, and camphene. These specific compounds belong to a broad class of chemicals known as terpenes, which plants originally evolved as sophisticated defense mechanisms against insects, fungi, and grazing herbivores. In the context of human food preparation, these exact same ancient defense mechanisms are unleashed against microscopic, disease-causing pathogens. When applied directly to the surface of a food product, such as a piece of raw or curing meat, black pepper essential oil creates a highly hostile chemical environment for bacteria. Extensive research demonstrates that the essential oils of black pepper are remarkably effective at physically inhibiting the growth and spread of major foodborne pathogens. This includes notoriously dangerous bacteria such as Salmonella enterica, Staphylococcus aureus, and Escherichia coli. The scientific literature increasingly supports the use of these natural plant extracts as safe, highly effective alternatives to modern synthetic chemical preservatives. In commercial food preservation today, synthetic compounds like butylated hydroxyanisole and butylated hydroxytoluene are widely used to prevent spoilage and chemical oxidation. However, the essential oils within black pepper demonstrate an antioxidant and antimicrobial capacity that actively rivals these laboratory-created chemicals. By naturally neutralizing free radicals and stunting bacterial growth, pepper actively prevents the lipid oxidation that causes meat to go rancid in the first place. The cellular destruction of pathogens. To truly appreciate the breathtaking power of this spice, we must closely observe its antimicrobial reality at the microscopic cellular level. The essential oils within black pepper are highly lipophilic, meaning they possess a strong, natural chemical affinity for fats and lipids. This specific chemical property is the exact mechanism that makes them so incredibly deadly to single-cell bacteria. The protective outer cell membrane of gram-negative bacteria, such as the dangerous Escherichia coli, is primarily composed of a complex phospholipid bilayer. When a bacterial cell encounters the essential oils of black pepper on the surface of a sausage, a violent biochemical reaction occurs. Because the oils are aggressively lipophilic, they effortlessly partition themselves directly into the delicate lipid structure of the bacterial cell membrane. This chemical intrusion deeply disrupts the structural integrity of the cell wall, causing it to swell, warp, and ultimately lose its vital physical stability. Under the unrelenting influence of the essential oils, the bacterial cells become physically deformed, pitted, shriveled, and hopelessly compromised. Once the cellular membrane is torn open by the terpenes, the bacteria suffer a catastrophic, fatal loss of internal pressure and vital fluids. The essential oils cause the immediate, irreversible leakage of essential intracellular constituents directly into the surrounding environment. Laboratory measurements have tracked the rapid leakage of crucial electrolytes, including potassium and phosphate ions, within mere minutes of exposure to black pepper essential oil. This initial breach is rapidly followed by the devastating loss of the bacteria's genetic material and vital energy reserves. As the cell membrane fully disintegrates under the chemical assault, the bacteria literally bleed out their internal proteins and their DNA. They also lose all of their adenosine triphosphate, which is the fundamental energy currency of all living biological cells. Without these critical components, cellular respiration ceases entirely, and the bacteria immediately die on the surface of the meat. Therefore, when medieval cooks aggressively rubbed their hands with crushed black pepper, they were deploying a microscopic chemical assault that physically shredded the cell walls of the bacteria attempting to spoil their food. Transitioning to modern pharmacology, the ruthless biological warfare waged by black pepper essential oils on the surface of a curing sausage is only half of the scientific story. The true, astonishing physiological magic of black pepper occurs long after the spice has been swallowed, digested, and absorbed into the human body. To properly explore this, we must fast forward from the soot-stained kitchens of the Middle Ages to the sterile, brightly lit laboratories of modern pharmacology. Here, researchers have successfully isolated the single most important and pharmacologically powerful compound hidden within the peppercorn. At the very heart of black pepper's chemical profile is its primary active compound, an alkaloid. We can define an alkaloid as a chemical trigger. It is a naturally occurring organic compound containing basic nitrogen atoms that initiates profound systemic biological responses within the human body. Familiar chemicals like caffeine, nicotine, and morphine are all famous examples of highly potent plant-based alkaloids. In black pepper, the specific alkaloid responsible for its biting, fiery pungency is scientifically known as piperine. Piperine is the undisputed star of black pepper's massive pharmacological profile, constituting roughly 5 to 10% of the dry weight of a high-quality peppercorn. When you chew on a peppercorn and feel that sharp, burning sensation spread across your tongue, you're actively experiencing the chemical effects of piperine physically binding to the pain and heat receptors in your mouth. But piperine's interaction with human biology extends far deeper than mere sensory stimulation or culinary pleasure. Over the last several decades, clinical researchers have discovered that piperine actively fundamentally alters the way the human digestive tract and liver process other chemicals. It acts as a remarkably powerful bioenhancer, entirely rewriting the rules of human metabolic absorption. By successfully manipulating the highly complex enzymatic pathways of the human body, piperine unlocks the therapeutic potential of dozens of other medicinal compounds. Without piperine acting as a chemical trigger, many of these beneficial compounds will be completely ignored, destroyed, and discarded by the human digestive system. The problem of bioavailability. To fully grasp the miraculous nature of piperine, we must first deeply understand the fundamental biological obstacle that has plagued pharmacologists and nutritionists for centuries. The ultimate challenge in modern oral medicine almost always hinges on the complex concept of bioavailability. We can accurately define bioavailability as a bodily absorption gateway. It represents the exact, measurable proportion of a swallowed drug, nutrient, or chemical that successfully enters the systemic blood circulation and is therefore able to have an active therapeutic effect on the body. You can swallow a massive, concentrated dose of a highly beneficial plant extract or a life-saving synthetic drug, but if that substance has poor bioavailability, it is practically useless. The human digestive system is a hostile, highly selective environment designed by millions of years of rigorous evolution to keep foreign toxins out of the bloodstream. When a pill or a dietary supplement is swallowed, it must survive the highly acidic bath of the stomach and navigate the destructive enzymes of the intestinal lumen. It must then successfully cross the incredibly selective mucosal barrier of the intestinal wall. Even if a foreign compound manages to survive the stomach and successfully cross the intestinal wall, it faces an even more formidable biological adversary. Before the newly absorbed blood from the intestines is allowed to circulate to the brain, the heart, and the rest of the body, it is strictly routed directly to the liver via the portal vein. The human liver is the ultimate chemical fortress of the body, acting as a relentless, highly efficient metabolic filtration system. Its primary biological job is to identify foreign chemical compounds, rapidly break them down, and flag them for immediate excretion through the urine or bile. This brutal filtration process is famously known in medical pharmacology as the first pass effect. The liver utilizes a massive, complex arsenal of specialized metabolic enzymes to rapidly alter the molecular structure of these incoming chemicals. If a medicinal compound is highly susceptible to this first pass metabolism, the liver will aggressively destroy it before it ever has a chance to reach the wider bloodstream. This intense metabolic filtration is the exact reason why so many highly promising natural plant remedies completely fail to produce results when tested in human clinical trials. Piperine as the metabolic roadblock. The liver accomplishes this ruthless metabolic clearing primarily through two highly specific biochemical pathways. The first is a biological process known as glucuronidation, which is orchestrated by a massive family of enzymes called UDP glucuronosyl transferases. During the rapid process of glucuronidation, the liver forcefully attaches a large, bulky sugar molecule directly to the foreign compound circulating in the blood. This chemical addition instantly makes the target molecule highly water-soluble, ensuring that the kidneys can easily filter it out of the blood and flush it down the toilet in the form of urine. The second major metabolic pathway involves a family of powerful oxidizing proteins, most notably the cytochrome P450-3A4 enzyme. This specific, highly reactive enzyme is heavily concentrated in the liver and the lining of the human intestines. It is directly responsible for the rapid oxidation, metabolization, and deactivation of nearly half of all pharmaceutical drugs currently sold on the global market. Together, the UDP glucuronosyl transferases and cytochrome P450-3A4 enzymes act as a highly effective, deeply frustrating metabolic roadblock, stopping beneficial botanical compounds dead in their tracks. This is the exact moment where the modern science of pungency fundamentally rewrites human biology. When ingested alongside a meal or a medicinal supplement, the piperine alkaloid acts as a potent, highly specific enzymatic inhibitor. We can define an enzymatic inhibitor as a metabolic roadblock. Piperine essentially operates as a microscopic lock-and-key mechanism, physically binding to the specific enzymes in the liver and the intestinal wall.
By attaching itself directly to these metabolic proteins, piperine temporarily alters their physical shape and completely shuts down their ability to function. By successfully suppressing these critical enzymes, piperine effectively dismantles the liver's natural metabolic roadblock.
It prevents the liver from attaching those bulky sugar molecules during glucuronidation, and it successfully stops the cytochrome P450-3A4 enzymes from tearing apart incoming molecular structures. For a brief, crucial window of time, the bodily absorption gateway is thrown wide open. Other therapeutic compounds that are swallowed alongside the black pepper are suddenly granted free, unimpeded passage directly into the systemic bloodstream of the patient. The curcumin revolution. The most spectacular, scientifically validated demonstration of piperine's astonishing power as a bioenhancer involves its relationship with another ancient spice. Turmeric is the bright yellow rhizome that gives Indian curry powder its distinctive color, and it has been deeply revered in traditional Ayurvedic medicine for thousands of years. The primary active compound hidden within turmeric is a brilliant yellow polyphenol, known to chemists as curcumin. In isolated laboratory cell cultures, curcumin consistently demonstrates incredibly potent anti-inflammatory, antioxidant, and anti-cancer properties. However, for decades, modern clinical researchers were deeply frustrated by curcumin's performance in living human subjects. Whenever they administered pure curcumin orally to human patients, the resulting blood plasma levels were consistently dismal. Curcumin suffers from catastrophically poor bioavailability. Because it is highly lipophilic and aggressively targeted by the liver, swallowed curcumin is subjected to incredibly rapid glucuronidation. The liver destroys the curcumin molecules so quickly that almost none of it ever reaches the bloodstream to exert its highly touted anti-inflammatory effects.
This enduring medical mystery was spectacularly solved by a landmark pharmacological study published in 1998 by a brilliant team of researchers. The team, led by Dr. Guido Schober at St. John's Medical College, deeply understood that piperine was a known inhibitor of hepatic and intestinal glucuronidation. They boldly hypothesized that combining the black pepper alkaloid with the turmeric extract could finally bypass the liver's formidable defenses. To rigorously test this theory, they administered specific doses of curcumin to both rats and healthy human volunteers, measuring the exact concentration of the drug in their blood serum over several hours.
The results of the 1998 Schober study were nothing short of revolutionary, proving the microscopic lock and key mechanism beyond any shadow of a doubt. The blood serum data clearly demonstrated the incredible metabolic power of the black pepper alkaloid at work within the human body. When observing the human volunteers, the researchers recorded the following heavily contrasted chemical absorption rates. When a massive 2-gram dose of pure curcumin was administered entirely alone, the resulting serum levels in the human bloodstream were either completely undetectable or incredibly low. When that exact same 2-gram dose of curcumin was administered in conjunction with just 20 milligrams of piperine, the serum concentration skyrocketed between 15 minutes and 1 hour after ingestion. The co-administration of the black pepper extract resulted in a staggering exponential 2,000% increase in the overall bioavailability of the curcumin. Broadening the pharmacological horizon. The groundbreaking 1998 Schober study fundamentally changed the landscape of modern nutritional pharmacology. It explicitly proved that black pepper was not just a mere flavor enhancer or a dusty medieval status symbol. It established piperine as a highly sophisticated chemical key capable of safely unlocking human metabolic pathways. By simply adding a tiny fraction of piperine to a massive dose of curcumin, scientists were able to turn a biologically useless yellow powder into a highly active, systemically circulating anti-inflammatory drug. This specific chemical synergy is the exact reason why nearly every high-quality turmeric supplement sold in pharmacies today explicitly includes a black pepper extract in its formulation. The pharmacological implications of piperine extend far beyond its famous highly profitable partnership with turmeric. Because the alkaloid successfully inhibits the liver's generalized cytochrome P450-3A4 and UDP glucuronyl transferases enzymes, it acts as a universal bioenhancer for a massive variety of natural and synthetic compounds. Clinical trials have repeatedly demonstrated that piperine exponentially increases the bodily absorption of resveratrol, the famous heart-healthy antioxidant found in the skin of red grapes and red wine. Without piperine acting as a metabolic roadblock, resveratrol suffers the exact same rapid metabolic destruction as curcumin in the liver. When resveratrol is administered in conjunction with piperine, the systemic exposure to the antioxidant in human testing increased by over 200%. Furthermore, piperine is actively being investigated by major pharmaceutical companies for its astonishing ability to enhance the absorption of critical, life-saving prescription drugs. By serving as a potent enzymatic inhibitor, piperine has been shown to significantly increase the blood plasma levels of important medications like phenytoin, which is widely used to control violent epileptic seizures. It also drastically enhances the absorption of rifampicin, a critical antibiotic used globally in the difficult treatment of tuberculosis. By temporarily dismantling the liver's metabolic roadblock, piperine allows modern doctors to achieve required therapeutic blood levels using significantly smaller doses of the primary drug. This biological manipulation is incredibly important because it possesses the remarkable potential to reduce the risk of severe, debilitating pharmaceutical side effects caused by massive drug doses. Piperine is also currently being studied for its ability to inhibit P-glycoprotein, an efflux pump that stubbornly pushes chemotherapy drugs out of highly resistant cancer cells. The chemical trigger found in the medieval spice trade is now poised to become a vital tool in the modern fight against multi-drug resistant diseases. The king of spices.
From the terrifying, blood-soaked naval battles of the Venetian Empire to the quiet, microscopic precision of modern hepatology, black pepper has shaped human history more profoundly than any other food stream on Earth. We have successfully debunked the lingering, foolish myth that the spice was desperately used to hide the unbearable stench of rotting meat. We have recognized its heavy historical usage as the ultimate form of conspicuous consumption. We now understand that the heavy dusting of pepper on a medieval roast was the edible Rolex of the aristocratic banquet table, broadcasting immense wealth and global reach. We have thoroughly marveled at the incredible antimicrobial reality of its complex essential oils.
We've observed exactly how the lipophilic terpenes physically shatter the protective cell walls of dangerous bacteria to beautifully preserve our food. Finally, we have mapped the highly elegant, complex chemistry of its primary alkaloid. We have watched piperine successfully slip into the human liver to shut down the destructive enzymes that stubbornly guard our bloodstream. The journey of the black peppercorn is a breathtaking testament to the intersection of human desire and profound chemical complexity. It is a story that begins with kings desperately hoarding wrinkled berries in the hulls of sinking wooden ships. It evolves into a tale of global exploration, economic monopolies, and the ruthless pursuit of exotic flavors. It culminates in the brightly lit laboratories of the 21st century, where scientists are finally unraveling the deep metabolic secrets hidden within the spice. Black pepper is completely inseparable from the grand narrative of human progress. It is not merely a common condiment to be casually dusted over a morning plate of eggs. It is a masterclass in exotic botany, brutal economics, and complex human biology. It is a tiny, blackened vault of profound chemical secrets, waiting quietly in a glass shaker on every dining table in the world.